Andy, you want to ask your question, and then Frank?
I was just going to ask Joe, because it sounds like what Joe is speaking to us, he's talking about that the 15, and I think it was mentioned or something, 15%, but just to clarify, that the 15% is literally just the cost in commissions and fees to raise the money, and that your operational cost of, the attorneys and whatnot is really part of the 85%. So, Mikey, I mean, if Joe clarifies that, and that's the case, that I'm thinking that the operational cost to box it out could only hurt you, not help you. Joe, is that?
Yeah, I think that's correct. As I say, once we get the comments in, I want to be a lot more specific. I kind of need the comments to be specific, but that's the idea, and the purpose. The purpose of the 85% is to identify a level of investment that's going to benefit the issuer rather than benefiting the broker. On the other hand, that the broker isn't limited to 15%. If the issuer has some other source of income, they can pay them 35% as far as the rule proposes, or as they say, warrants or options or securities or a Cadillac.
Right.
I don't know what you get. What do you get?
Well, your boss and our indirect boss, Rick Ketchum, he's done several speeches, as you know, lately, where he borrowed one of our association's terms, one size doesn't fit all. He said that, as you know, at FSX and TNDA and at SIFMA recently. And he was referring to this 15-cent rule on the basis, Andy, that on smaller deals, no matter what you do, those 30 or 40 line items that are going to potentially be the issues considered of what's in the 15% and what's not, it's still going to come up to a big number percentage-wise on small deals. So that's why we have to look at that. The other comment, frankly, that they were just talking about indirectly that you mentioned in your speech earlier was the timing thing. And in our conversation, we had brought up the fact that when a broker-dealer sends in a PPM to your department under the new requirement, from the comment that you may give back period of time, that I think you had indicated it would be some time until the deal ended before you actually plan to get back to them, right?
Unless we saw something, dramatic.
Dramatic, but in most cases, so if there was potentially any changes that were material in time, could that subject the issuer and the broker-dealer to state regulations where if they had to change something material to sticker it, that they could potentially be facing a rescission? And that was a timing issue that we wanted to cover in the...
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to need to, we talked before, I think I'm going to need to read more about what you have to say for me to completely understand this issue. But today, if we were jerks, we could send an 8210 letter out to every broker that participates in a private placement, or had participated in a private placement in 2009. We could identify through Form Ds everybody who participated in a private placement in 2009, send them all 8210 letters and say, show us the PPMs. That's, within, there's really nothing different that's going to happen here. It's going to be filed with us, but it's the same process. Some of them we're going to look at, some of them we'll follow up on, but it doesn't, I don't understand really how it raises any different issues than would be raised if an examiner is in your office and says, show me the PPMs for all the private placements you participated in last year, and you show them the PPMs. I mean, it's the concept is supposed to be identical.
Okay. Good.
So from the Peach State, Mr. Frank Hart, do you have a question?
Actually, I have an overview comment. We have a systemic problem here because Goldman Sachs and Morgan Chase and Morgan Stanley are very different from all the firms that are represented here. I run a small fund which we founded in 1983. 10 years ago, there were probably 10 times as many investment banking firms that were members of NIBA than there are today. 5 years ago, there were probably 5 times as many. Now, some of those firms deserved to go because, frankly, the people were not straightforward and honest and honorable. Many of them did not. Many of them are out of the business because either they were over-regulated and forced out, even though they weren't some of the bad guys and didn't have hundreds of millions to spend as a Goldman does to defend whatever's going on, or have the rules written their way in the first place, or the economics just caught up with them and it just didn't pay anymore to put up with all of the aggravation of being in the business. There are some very good people who used to be corporate finance, investment bankers, brokers, syndicate heads that have left. And it's because it just wasn't economic anymore. So I'm very glad to see that you're here. I'm glad to see that you're reaching out to this level of the marketplace, because as we all know, all the surveys and all of the data that we have admit that most of the new jobs in America come from small companies, not from IBM and Microsoft and so on and so on. And to the extent that there are fewer of my friends and colleagues here in the investment banking, underwriting, capital raising sector, then we are put at a further and continuing disadvantage on the world stage. And I've watched over the last 10 years, with one thing and another, the regulatory environment become such that we have effectively shot one of our last remaining edges in the world somewhere between the foot and the head. And we don't have an advantage in the world capital markets anymore. China is getting ready to beat our brains in this arena, as are a number of other places. So I'm glad you're here, but I just had one suggestion for you, Joe. I know you're talking to a lot of the people who are here, the broker-dealers. I see on the panel here we have a number of lawyers and 2 people who are actually in the business. The lawyers are good because they know what's going on. It's the business people, though, who end up making the decision to stay in the business or get out. And I would encourage you to talk to the NIBA members here who are in the broker-dealer business and find out what, instead of talking about the regulations, ask them a more open-ended question. What do you need to have the environment be like so that you're happy to be in this business instead of gritting your teeth and feel like your fingernails are going down the chalkboard every day? Because that's the problem that we have. The environment is unfriendly to people trying to do this job. And we're going to end up losing the rest of them if we don't change the whole tenor of it. So thanks for coming.
Well, you're going to be surprised to hear. You're going to be surprised to hear that I agree with half of what you said.
That's a lot higher percentage than I usually.
Yeah, the firms that raise capital for small business and the NIBA members, I've seen actually the lists of NIBA members coming out and going like this, and that is, I think, bad for the economy. I'm very interested in what happened to this market, and it's mainly gone over to the private placement side instead of the registered public side. I read an article Michael and I were talking about that was really good, that approached some of this, and one of the things that they blamed it on is the penny quotes. It just, market makers, it's not that economical anymore to make a market. The other is that the portfolios, to have a small amount in your portfolio requires so much due diligence. The institutions want a bigger slug of something to make it worth its while. But finally, and I agree with you about Goldman Sachs, the research analyst rules were a direct result of Wall Street firms, cheating, with research, and the research rules apply to the whole industry. And when the smaller regional investment banks would go and they say, we'll make a market for you, we'll participate in your distribution, and we'll provide research on your company because you're local here and we know it. That whole business model has been, kicked to the curb as a result of the research analyst rules. And so I think you're right about that. And when I talk to people, I'd actually gone and talked to people in the industry about research, and they said there's no problem here, and then it all blew up, and then you're doing rules to respond to a scandal, which are absolutely the worst kind of rules to do. And some of the stuff, blackout periods, I think blackout periods are terrible. Give investors information. We end up with rules with blackout periods. So I agree. I think it's a more complicated issue about what happened to the market than over-regulation, but it's certainly part of the story.
So let me say this. As usual, well said, Mr. Hart, but I would like to be practical and realistic. Joe's not going to, your suggestion's well taken, but Joe's not going to have an opportunity to visit with all of you, but what he can do is listen to you when you send a comment. He will take the time to sort through them and read them. So even though he can't spend time this afternoon and tomorrow to be here to talk to you individually, if you will compile it and you will compile with your thoughts, I think that he will listen and he will respond. That's why we invited him here, because he does care. This is a golden opportunity for us. We're in a transition in our industry to have a leader like this that cares and wants to work with us and listen and adjust the rules. One other point that you made, and then we'll be wrapping it up, is this. You had mentioned about people getting out of the business and, what are they doing, where they're going. I don't know if I'm going to take it or not, but I did get offered a consulting job for those people that are thinking about getting out, and I am possibly going to be overseeing the entire greeter market for Walmart. So anybody that's looking for something, as a Walmart greeter in an exotic location, I might be able to help you out. Thanks so much, Joe. We appreciate it. We have no more time. I got to cut, so we have to cut. Thank you very much.